Of course not. It was not planned. It is 1968, and I'm only 19 years old. I asked about carefully, you understand. It turns out that someone Stephen knows, has heard of, he's supposed to be trustworthy. You won't believe this. He's a local minister, a Baptist minister.
There were several local women who over a 2-year period had conducted interviews of representatives of social and health agencies, colleges, minors, and unmarried women, and found no community agency that offered a family planning educational program.
We also contacted Planned Parenthood for the advantages and obligations of affiliation with a national organization. We became convinced of the need for a family planning agency in our county and set up a steering committee.
I was asked to be a member of that first board of directors and to chair the Clergy Advisory Committee.
A minute, please. I need to give you some context. All this was happening in Tompkins County in the 1960s, when any number of medically related services were being founded, along with some social service agencies, mostly designed to step into places where government or current medical aid did not venture. As the county population expanded, people came seeking expertise and comfort that was not yet available.
Displaced homemakers.
The Racker Center,
Rape Crisis Center,
The Cayuga Chamber Orchestra, the brass band, and several dance companies.
Suicide Prevention, Hospicare.
They all sprouted as do daffodils in spring. This was, of course, not the first crop, for Tompkins County had been part of the burned over district, that flowering of religious and perfectionist organizations that appeared in the second quarter of the 19th century. Educational reform, prison reform, temperance societies, communitarian efforts, utopian communities, religious sects. They all grew here, flaring up, dying down, and flaring up again like a prairie fire that seems to be out and then springs again to life. Central New York burned with ideas, some lasting, some others quite loony, that faded away. So it was in the 1960s and 70s in Tompkins County, a time of ferment. It is what made this county what it has become today. It stands out. History, you know, always had something to say in an attempt to explain events. So say I, your historian.
In April 1968, Planned Parenthood opened an office in space donated by the First Presbyterian Church, later expanded into the First Baptist. Not long after, a couple seeking an abortion knocked on that door.
Abortion was illegal. Planned Parenthood was in no position to offer help at the time, so inquiries were directed to me as chair of the Clergy Advisory Committee. Within a couple of weeks, we began to have visitors looking for information about abortion. I have to admit that for the first young couple, university students, I was less than an effective counselor.
We need help and don't know where to turn.
I found myself trying to talk them out of wanting an abortion. I was not really listening. Still, having been open about abortion choice and the need to change the law, this was the first time in my professional life to be confronted by persons actually wanting an abortion.
We can't have a baby. We're not ready. I'm only 19.
Then it occurred to me, and I said, Dave, what you are doing is not your prerogative. Then the grace and mercy of God began to flow within me.
My boyfriend needs to finish his degree.
I knew that the Judson Memorial Baptist Church in Greenwich Village offered a clergy consultation service on abortion. So I called my friend Howard Moody to ask if he could be helpful to the couple.
The pastor in New York City gave Reverend Evans the information, and we went forward.
Over the next month or so, I was able to refer persons to New York City, about one a week. Then a call came in.
David, it's Howard Moody here. We have so many people in this city asking for help. We can't accept anyone outside the metropolitan area.
So what can we do? The need is so much greater than I ever imagined.
How about starting an upstate service?
I knew I had to do something locally, so 7 religious workers in Ithaca, Protestant and Roman Catholic, formed the Upstate Clergy Consultation Service on problem pregnancies. We soon became a group of 13, and we referred women who chose abortion to qualified, licensed physicians. In time, our load became so heavy we organized satellites in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, and Albany.
We chose to be a service of problem pregnancies rather than abortion. We wanted to communicate that we were open to options. We wanted as much acceptance as possible.
The term problem pregnancy was never questioned.
The telephone number was 607-273-7172. Women would call that number and hear a taped message made by a woman, the secretary of First Baptist, indicating the name and phone number of clergy one would call in their area. A new message was taped every Thursday night. The answering machine was in the office of First Baptist.
All of this was totally illegal at the time. Everyone needed to be careful. While willing to help, no one really wanted to go to jail. It was much like the abolitionists of the mid-19th century. Most of them wanted to act, but getting caught would have placed them and their families in grave danger. Both were very much undercover activities.
We were underground, but it was becoming evident that the risk of exposure was increasing. The service was needed and wanted. We understood that in going public, we should not mention First Baptist or the church's other than usual ministry.
Wanting to avoid as much fallout as possible, the answering machine was moved to the basement of the secretary's home.
Protestants of several denominations, Roman Catholics, 1 priest, 2 sisters, and 1 Jew were members of the service. Denominational relationships of the coordinators, very strategic persons, were Unitarian in Buffalo and Rochester, and American Baptist in Syracuse, Utica, Albany, and Ithaca. First Baptist secretary was a Rockefeller Republican and former chair of the county Republican committee. She was politically astute, a mother, grandmother, and a friend of many. She was compassionate towards persons with problem pregnancies, and especially those she knew who had tragic abortions.
As the consultation services expanded, more women sought services.
I found it necessary to reduce my consulting load to devote time to securing doctors for Ithaca and satellites. This involved travel. Unless it could be a therapeutic abortion, we did not ever refer women to physicians in New York. For under state law, it was a criminal offense to perform, prescribe, or submit to an abortion unless it was necessary to preserve the life of the mother.
It was also a criminal offense to manufacture, give or sell an instrument, medicine, or drug with the intent to be used in ending a pregnancy. 42 other states had similar laws.
Because the law was strict with physicians and women who submitted to abortion, legal counsel advised that we cross state lines to confuse the issue for the states. The National Clergy Network made it possible to recommend physicians in their areas. We also needed to be concerned for ourselves.
Then as now, each state had its own laws, mostly spurred on by the dreaded Anthony Comstock, who advocated that information about abortion not be allowed to pass through the U.S. mails.
It was a misdemeanor to give advice about abortion to women pregnant fewer than 26 weeks, and a felony for pregnancies 26 weeks and over. The state penal code, the criminal facilitation, made it a Class A misdemeanor for
A person who intends to commit a crime engages in conduct which provides such person with the means or opportunity for the commission thereof, and which in fact aids such person to commit a felony.
We did not advise, we did not admit to doing anything illegal. We were counseled that persons who arrange for another to commit a crime endanger themselves under the criminal facilitation section. We did not arrange, but we did give information. We clergy, adept at interpretation and innuendos of words in the theological world, needed help in courts of law. However, there were no charges ever pressed or that went to trial. Incidentally, we had an understanding that if one clergy was arrested, all of us would be there. Suffice it to say, we believed, we knew, that what we were doing outside the law was less immoral than the law itself.
David Evans went off to meet the physicians to be sure they were in good standing, and the national network exchanged information about physicians. There were some guidelines.
Physicians would not perform an operation if the woman was more than 12 weeks pregnant. A doctor in Puerto Rico limited it to 8 weeks. Physicians in England and Japan, where abortion was legal, were willing to operate up to 26 weeks. Physicians' fees would not exceed $350.
Equal to $3,569.01 today.
And some were less. Physicians were to have security systems in place, including entrances to offices and overnight accommodations.
David would case the joint, so to speak.
I did so to be sure that I would feel secure and to be able to describe the layout to others. Another stipulation was that there were no commission or remuneration from physicians to clergy. Clergy were not to accept financial contributions from consultants either. Contributions were used as discretionary funds to provide transportation or living arrangements. This fund was administered by non-clergy living in Ithaca, and clergy made a monthly contribution to the fund in order to pay telephone bills as well as travel expenses.
I called the number 607-273-7172. I had to get a certificate from my doctor confirming that I was pregnant, and then a voice on the phone gave me information as to how to communicate with the physician.
If the woman seemed ambivalent, no information was given, as such women might or might not return. Some women were referred to an approved home for unmarried women.
Most unmarried women did not want their parents to know, and most parents were unaware. Married couples often opted to go to England rather than to another state.
There was one dreadful instance. A woman opted to go to Puerto Rico, got a taxi from the airport, but was lured away from the address she had been given and was assaulted and had a botched abortion. When she returned to her campus, the medical director there wanted to call in the district attorney. After a number of clergy called and talked to him about the consequences for the young woman, her family, and the consultation services, he decided not to go to the authorities. After that, each woman had to have a traveling companion. This was the closest we came to the county district attorney crossing the parking lot to the First Baptist.
I was told not to eat or drink for 8 hours before my appointment, and not to talk to other women in the doctor's office as to why they were there. I was to remain at least 2 hours after the operation. All went well, and I went back to my classes the next Monday.
There are records of the women we helped, of the couples we aided. Female, 17, high school junior Catholic. Male partner, 16, high school junior Catholic.
Female, 19, engaged, college student, Protestant. Male partner, 23, engaged, college student, Catholic.
Female, 18, nurse's aide, divorced with 2 children, 5 and 7, Protestant. Male, 29, auto body shop worker, single, Catholic.
Female, 20, unemployed, Catholic. Male, 23, student, married, no religious preference.
Female 21, student, black Muslim. Male 19, student, Christian Scientist.
Female, 21, student, Protestant. Male, 26, teacher, Protestant. When told of her pregnancy, he disappeared.
Female 20, student, Catholic. Male 21, student, Catholic. They chose to marry.
Female, 17, homemaker, divorced, Protestant. Male, 29, employed, married.
Female 37, homemaker, married, Catholic. Male 40, employed, married, Catholic.
Female, 23, employed, single, Protestant. Male, 23, employed, single.
Certainly, Jewish women also became pregnant, but there was not generally the same concern for secrecy from family, nor was there the issue of sin. Jewish law only considers a fetus a person at birth. Life does not begin at conception under Jewish law. Sources in the Talmud note that the fetus is mere water before 40 days of gestation. Following this period, the fetus is considered a physical part of the pregnant individual's body, not yet having life of its own or independent rights. The fetus is not viewed as separate from the parent's body until birth, and the first breath of oxygen into the lungs allows the soul to enter the body.
Woman 20, student. She had been raped. We heard afterwards from many of those we helped.
When I woke in the morning, I felt peace, not guilt. No guilt. I knew I was all right, but most of all, my fears were gone. I returned home with this joy of knowing I would make it.
One of the best physicians we worked with, who gave his patients time after the operation to talk about their feelings,
was a large black man with an enormous afro. He came to regional clergy meetings to explain the operation, and he would return as improvements in technique became possible. Not all doctors could meet this humane standard.
While aiding patients and making arrangements for operations, there was a second drama taking place.
On February 2nd, 1970, there was a front-page article in the Ithaca Journal that asked the question, "Want counseling on a problem pregnancy?" The article continued that an announcement had been made that morning by a group of 60 upstate New York clergy of many denominations of the formation of the Upstate New York Clergy Consultation Service on problem pregnancies, with 6 units, including one centered in Ithaca. The state coordinator and spokesman, Reverend David Evans, pastor of First Baptist Church, stated,
"The needs of the women are paramount. We are concerned that women who want to have an abortion have a safe abortion."
The news release was like a lightning bolt. Throughout upstate New York, more than 60 clergymen and women went public with their underground activities. We wanted women whose pregnancy was problematic to receive a safe medical abortion by a licensed physician. Others joined our work. Our ultimate goal, however, was repeal of the existing punitive state statute. That Groundhog Day of 1970, we stuck our head out of the ground and risked whatever the future was to bring.
We knew that what we were doing was essential for individual lives, but that the law needed to be changed. I contacted Republican State Assemblywoman Constance Cook to come to a meeting. She later recalled,
"A woman friend told me she was going to England to accompany a friend to have an abortion. She said, 'Well, you should know what I'm doing.' This was the first I realized that the Clergy Consultation Service was operating right here in Tompkins County. Mr. Evans came to see me. He said he wanted me to meet with a group of clergy in the area. He didn't tell me what it was about, but I could tell by the way he made the appointment that he wanted a firm commitment from me. That's not always easy for a legislator, but because he was fussy, I realized that it was important, and I went. When I walked into the meeting room in the Baptist church, there were probably 20 to 25 people there, most of whom were clergy of all different sects: Protestant, Catholic, Jewish, male and female. They came from as far as Buffalo and from over the Upstate area. It was obviously the Upstate Clergy Consultation group. They told me what they were doing. They didn't introduce themselves, but they wanted me to continue to push forward the abortion bill. They wanted to know what they could do to help. Well, this was just the greatest thing in the world because it was exactly what we needed.
David Evans was born in 1928 in Wales and came through Ellis Island to the United States as an infant. David met his wife, Grace, at church in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they married in 1952. Reverend Evans at the time was an undergraduate at Nebraska Wesleyan University. He received graduate degrees from Colgate Rochester Divinity School and Union Theological Seminary. He served as pastor of First Baptist Church in Ithaca from 1966 to 1994. The words spoken here by our David Evans are those that Reverend David Evans wrote. The woman at the end of the phone was his wife, Grace Evans.
At a memorial service held on April 15th, 2023, David was described as someone with heart, someone who made and crossed bridges, a man who loved all music and especially good food. Mostly, David Evans honored people's stories. The work that began as the Clergy Consultation Service for troubled pregnancies is today carried out legally and with sound medical outcomes in New York at Planned Parenthood clinics and in hospitals. Well, that was true everywhere when I first wrote this piece. But in June 24th, 2022, the United States Supreme Court struck down Roe v. Wade and brought on an onslaught of states who revoked a woman's right to have control over her own body and her own future. These laws were promulgated by people who inserted their own personal beliefs, which we do not deny them, but which they have imposed on all women. They deny women a perfect personhood as promised by our Constitution.
We honor the work of Reverend David Evans and his story and that of others, men and women together, who made the Clergy Consultation Service for troubled pregnancies possible. We recognize that change can only come by working together people of good faith to bring about a world of fairness and equality. To us today, who have lived through those years when abortion was illegal and difficult to manage and expensive, the meanness of our times is unimaginable. That people want to legislate for all women in any circumstance can only cause all of us harm. We cannot, must not go back on this promise to women that each is able to determine safely and legally the trajectory of her own life. In 1998, with abortion in the country legal and there were medical professionals to provide services, Reverend Evans said,
I personally believe that abortion will never again be illegal as we have known it to be in the past. The public will not allow it, including the 8,000 plus women who passed through the Upstate New York Clergy Consultation Service.
Yet, here we are again,